Now, political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu joins us now to share his thoughts on the ANC's briefing. Professor, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Now, we just received the briefing from the ANC Gauteng Provincial leadership, with them speaking on the fact that what we all thought would be an ousting of Premier Makhura. Does this give an indication of unity within the province in terms of how they're going about this transition?
No, thank you very much for having me, my sister. I think that Gauteng province should be applauded for the approach they've taken on this matter. Because on many occasions they've been made to believe that there is this fallacy of the so-called two centers of power, whereby if you are a premier and then you are no longer the chairperson of the party in the province, you have somebody else occupying that position, then there will be two centers of power, which is something really disturbing, because if you come from the same organization implementing the same policies, the issue of two centers of power should not arise. But the manner in which Gauteng has handled this matter is a very commendable one, because they are saying that they have reached consensus together with the Premier and the new leadership, that the Premier is ready to hand over, that is the term he opted for, as opposed to resigning or being recalled. He said he is ready to hand over to the new administration, and there will be consistency in terms of implementing policies, because they were together in any case in terms of planning those policies, and then it will be just a change of face, but the implementation process will continue unhindered, so to speak. So I think it's something good, so that at least as the public, we are taken into confidence that there is no power struggle that is happening. So that is something to be applauded.
Most certainly. Where do you think what the public and what the media had been spreading with regards to the Premier being ousted, where do you believe that emanated from?
There's been something ongoing for quite some time, my sister. I recall that, for example, in my own home province in KwaZulu-Natal in 2016, when then Premier Ntsikelelo won the position of being the chairperson of the ANC, then suddenly then Premier Mzwandile was recalled, and then of course was given an ultimatum to resign by 12 o'clock on a Monday. I remember that very well. So the argument being made at the time was that they wanted to avoid two centers of power. The same thing happened also at a national level, whereby they were saying that you cannot be the president of the party, the president of the country, when you are not the president of the party, because there will be two centers of power. So this narrative has been going on for some time. I'm just citing those two examples, but it's a narrative that has been going on for quite some time, so that if you are the chairperson of the party in the province, you then technically become the premier of the province. And then if you are the president of the party, and then you become the presidential candidate, and then subsequently the president of the country. So I think that is the narrative that has been there. So people who have been propagating the news that Makhura will be ousted and then Panyaza Lesotho will come in as the new chairperson of the ANC comes from that history. Not that there was anything of substance, but it was good for the leadership to then meet together and then debunk that myth, to borrow Panyaza Lesotho's words, to debunk that narrative that there is a power struggle and then the new leaders would want to take over power at all costs.
The current Premier emphasized that he had a wish that the next leader of the ANC should deliver the State of the Province address, which will take place in February of next year. And as we heard in the question and answer session, that person can't only come in January if that State of the Province address will be happening in February. Who do we possibly think could take up that position? Speaking on the issue of two centers of power, it clearly means that it's not an obvious that Mr. Lesotho will then take up the position of Premier should Makhura then be ousted or should take the decision to leave. Are we looking at other options with regards to who the Premier of Gauteng would then be?
Gauteng presents us with a very interesting scenario. If you juxtapose the Gauteng situation with the one in KZN, the leadership in KZN has proved beyond doubt that they are not power hungry. You saw this happening when, for instance, former Premier Ntsikelelo exited the stage, as it were. Some were anticipating that the new leader, Siboniso Duma, will be the next Premier. But they didn't do it that way. Instead, they came up with the name of Nomsa Dube Ncube, who is currently the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. In the case of Gauteng, we have a slightly different situation because you recall that before the provincial leadership was elected, there was a contest between Panyaza Lesufi and, of course, Lebogang Maile. So one of the possibilities then, if the party is really serious about uniting itself, one thing it could do would be to bring in someone like Lebogang Maile and say, okay, let him be the Premier until 2024, and then after 2024, in the event that we win the election, we'll see what to do. For me, that would be something, that would lead the party in the right direction. But of course, that is not to say that of the top 5 in the ANC in Gauteng, there is no one who is deserving of this position. Panyaza Lesufi, for me, is indeed a sure candidate because he has proved beyond doubt that he's a capable leader. He's a level-headed leader, and you remember when he was temporarily removed from the position of being MEC for education, even opposition parties cried foul to the extent that Premier Makhura had to return him to this position. So he's a leader, in fact, who meets the requirements of someone who's a unifier. You listen to him speak, you see him acting, you then get a sense that this is the leader who would, in fact, play a critical role in bringing the province together. But having said that, it doesn't mean that he's the only candidate, because if they were to work as a collective, they can take any one of the top 5 and the person will do the job, or they could bring in Lebogang Maile, as I was saying, in the name of unity, and then make sure that all the contest that was there before the provincial leadership was elected is now over. Now it's business for the ANC and the ANC alone. So they have a number of options, and it's up to them to decide which one will work best under the circumstances.
All right, we take the discussion on the ANC a little further with political analyst Dr. Ntsikelelo. Breakfast. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. We are discussing here with Professor Mngomezulu with regards to the ANC and the update that they've recently given us. And we are discussing the possibilities of who the next Premier is. I'd like to know from you, Dr. Breakfast, could we possibly see a female moving up the ranks to become Premier once again in Gauteng? I mean, within the top 5, we've got the Deputy Chair, who's Nobantula who's also currently the MEC in Finance.
Yeah, I think that will be good in theory, but in practice, I think the ANC has been falling short in terms of promoting, transformation, in particular with regard to the issue of inclusion. Normally, women are, unfortunately, co-opted. But I think in most cases, it's men who normally, tend to hold on to strategic positions. But if I can say a thing or two about the press conference, I think the tension, in my opinion, between the outgoing Premier and the PEC is palpable. I mean, at some point while the Premier was speaking, some of his comrades next to him are not even paying attention to him. To me, that is very, symbolic. We can sugarcoat it, in my view, and say that, no, they are functioning as a unit or as a unified force. But I think the issue of unity, I think the ANC in Gauteng falls short in that regard. So whether you call this a recall, or you call it a resignation, or you call it whatever, it comes down to a new political arrangement, which is necessitated by some of the tensions in that particular province.
So, Dr. Breakfast, are you saying that what we are seeing is not necessarily unity, but just a way to mask what possibly could be the tensions that you're alluding to within the province?
No, of course. I mean, to me, that was quite obvious at the press conference. I mean, at some point, I even felt like the Premier was contradicting himself in terms of his thoughtful process. It was not, coherent. It was not cogent. I mean, I'm sure as time goes by, these things are going to play themselves out in public. They said in the beginning, even yourself, you said so. There were 3 items on the agenda. The first one was the ANC, joining forces with other political parties to take over in strategic municipalities. I think the second one was the Gauteng preparing for the upcoming a conference. And then the third one was this one. But at the heart of everything was the issue of the outgoing premier. Let's face it, other issues were just, by the way. So it means that maybe we can read between the lines in terms of the reports that have come through today by media houses that all is not well in the ANC.
So, Dr. Breakfast, do you suggest that they should have just taken the stance like many other provinces and what has been set as a precedence within the ANC with other regions and provinces to then reshuffle leaders when a new batch comes in?
Look, what they have done is not out of the ordinary. It is not without keeping with the political culture of the ANC. I mean, we've seen that even themselves. They said that no, they are not following a trend. They are just sort of like trying to facilitate a smoothness trend. But the question that we must grapple with, in my opinion, is how does this so-called transition feed into development? How does it benefit the majority of the people of Gauteng? Or is it a question of trying to elbow this person or that person?
Lastly, Dr. Chairperson Lesufi mentioned that opposition parties in coalition, especially in the Gauteng province, is running to the ANC because what they now believe and see in terms of the coalitions they formed with the DA is certainly not working. Do you then foresee that the mayor, especially within the city of Johannesburg, Mpopalate, could be in September ousted and then being replaced by Dada?
Well, when one examines coalition formations, one will realize that they've been unworkable, they've been unstable, due to a number of reasons that, I think opposition parties have failed to capture the imagination of South Africans. And have failed to take strategic advantage of the weaknesses of the ANC. And by so doing, they are putting the ANC on good footing. And the ANC in Gauteng comes across to be having this new strategic arrangement now with the EFF, meaning that there might be some tensions between the EFF and the DA, not to say that they have a long-standing arrangement. But the ANC is the one that is benefiting of it. Even in the Nelson Mandela Bay, we might see another arrangement between the EFF and the ANC and even elsewhere. So that is putting the coalitions by the DA on the back foot.
All right. Thank you so much for that contribution. That is Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, as well as earlier on we had Professor Bheki Mngomezulu giving us very different takes with regards to the briefing that we received from the ANC a little earlier on.